Good evening, and welcome to tonight's edition of Thinking Thursday. I'm your host, Bronwyn Lucas, and I am so glad you're here tonight. Tonight, we are going to be talking about something that some of you may know a little about, and that is fear. Yes, fear. Now, if not you, maybe someone else you know has experienced fear in their lifetime. We're going to look at it and see just what is this thing called fear and how can it impact us. And if you are ever fearful, the deep breathing we're going to do is something you can do to help you through that fear. Those of you who have been with us before know that we start each week with 3 cleansing breaths, allowing ourselves the opportunity to deep breathe and get rid of some of the cares of the day. Deep breathing puts more oxygen in your brain, puts more oxygen flowing through your bloodstream, and allows your body to relax. So, let me tell you what I need you to do. When I say breathe in, you'll breathe in through your nose, and it'll be a slow breath. I'll count to 4, and you continue to breathe in, and you'll breathe out through your mouth. And I'll count to 4, and you'll breathe out. Excuse me. So let's begin. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3. One more in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. Excuse me. That was not the way to end your breathing. But I hope it allowed you to take a moment to just woosah and refresh and have a few deep breaths. As I said, that's a way of allowing yourself to calm down, manage some of the cares of the day, and to move forward. So that is why we do it, to get ready to just deep breathe, relax, chill for a moment, and be able to move on. As I said, I'm your host, Bronwyn Lucas with Able Counseling and Consulting. And our motto is that we affirm, build, lead, and empower you to become a better you. So tonight we're going to talk about spiritual, physical, and mental health through the lens of fear. Now, if you've ever heard me before, you know I say that health is health. So our spiritual health, our physical health, our mental health, even our financial health are all part of our health package. And when we impact any one part of our health, it impacts all the others. But spiritual, mental, and physical, we think about separating those, but spiritual, mental, and physical overlap. And tonight, when we discuss fear, we're going to see just how much they really do overlap. So let's just look at this. What does fear look like through this lens? Before I get started anymore, I want you to, if you're on, please take a moment to share. Share this on Facebook so that someone else may be able to get some information that may be helpful for them. I'm trying to check and see if we're already on. Um, hasn't quite shown up yet on Facebook for me, but we're going to move forward because it's there for you. So let's look at this. What is fear? I wanted to start off with a few quotes about fear. Fear is the most subtle and destructive of all human diseases. Fear kills dreams and hopes. And that's by Les Brown. Bruce Gendler says, fear has a large shadow, but he himself is actually small. Oprah says, think like a queen. A queen is not afraid to fail. And when we think about that, some of our fears we're hold on to because what if it goes wrong? What if I fail? What if? So one last one is Fear kills more than dreams, than more fear kills more dreams than failure ever will. So it is our fear that can be paralyzing. It is our fear that can do so many horrible things to us. I just realized that um, if you're on Facebook, I am on the wrong, it is coming from the wrong page. So, what I'm going to do is take a brief moment and put a note here on Facebook so those who are watching on the wrong page can get it on the right page. They'll know where to go. So, give me just a second and I'm going to make that post. Let me see if I can find out how to do that. Or I could stop and start it over, but I think I'll just, let me see. So give me just a second to fix this error. Um, well, this is why I can't wait till I get my co-host, my engineer, so to speak, so I won't have to deal with these problems and I'll have someone here helping, or at least I'll be helping remote, but it will be someone to help and fix errors like this. Well, I'm not seeing how to post on, let's see. I know that if you have a page, you post, and I'm looking on the Thinking Thursday page, which is what I thought I was posting from, how I can just make a comment here. Please go to my personal page. Here it is. Let me do that. Give me 1 second to type this in. And it is done. I'm glad I checked that out because I do want you to be able to hear it and see it, and I can get your comments. So let's just look. What is fear? Here are some, we gave you some quotes. Now, here's some acronyms: forget everything and run, false evidence appearing real, face everything and rise. As we talk about fear, we're going to see which one fits you. Are you the forget everything and run? Do you realize fear is false evidence appearing real? Or do you face everything and rise? Or are you more typically all of the above? It depends on the situation. So I said we're going to look at the physical, spiritual, and mental aspects of fear, and we're going to see how they overlap. So what I wanted to first do was just look at fear in your body. What does fear look like in your body? What is a physical thing? What can it do? Fear can weaken our immune system. It can cause cardiovascular damage. That's your heart. GI problems, ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome. It can decrease your fertility. It can accelerate aging and even premature death. It impacts our memory and it impacts our brain processing and reactivity. All of this when fear is in our body. See, when we think about fear in our body, we have to realize it, as you see, it impacts our body. How? When we talk about the things that fear does, think about when you're afraid, you tense up. And when your body is in that tense moment, in that zone of being tensed, it can't function well. It can't function adequately. Um, so it causes health problems. All that damage that you're doing in your body stays there. Here's an example. Take your hand and make a fist. Hold it tight. Don't let it go. Hold it tight. Hold it so tight it hurts. Just hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. Squeeze tighter and tighter and tighter. Yes. Yeah, don't let it go yet. Don't let it go yet. Now slowly, slowly, slowly open your hand. You can feel the difference when you let it go. That tension you were feeling, that pain you were feeling when you were making that fist, imagine that inside your body. That's what that fear response is like when you're in that moment. If your body stays in that fear response too long, can you imagine what that would be like? How horrible that would be for that to be what your body is doing. Not good at all. So, man, you see that things that can happen. Some other things in our body. One thing that we can look at, fear is made up of two primary reactions to something that is a real or perceived threat. It is biochemical and it's emotional. So the biochemical is simply saying the biological makeup of our body, the chemical makeup of our body, and emotional. That goes back to that mental status. So let's look at what are the two are these. The biochemical response is just simply things happen in our body when we feel like we're afraid. We feel that something's going to happen. We can sweat more. Our heart rate can increase. Adrenaline levels can go up, and our body is just on alert. That, like I said about that fist and that tense, you're just that tense, and that's what happens to your body. And that can flip us to the fight or flight response, where your body prepares to deal with the situation head on or run away. But it's because those chemicals in your body are making you respond. And it can be good or bad, but you respond. There is a physiological response in your body to an emotion. And if we think of an emotion as being a psychological entity, and it is, but it has physical responses. Now, here's the emotional side. The emotional side is more personal. It involves the same chemicals in our brains that make us fearful, are the same chemicals that respond when we're happy or excited, which is why some people like um, the jump scares at a movie. They enjoy the scary movies. They enjoy roller coaster rides. They all give you that sense of fear. That's a chemical reaction in your brain. So it can be positive, it can be negative, but it's definitely shows you that the brain and the physical body, your physiological being, reacts to emotions. In this case, those can be good, but if you're staying in that zone too long where there are those negative emotions, that fear or dread, that has a negative impact on your body, as we stated earlier. So when we look at the emotional end, it's going to lead us to the physiological part. See, fear is generally considered to be a reaction to something that is a threat or to our safety or our security. I'm scared because I think something's going to happen. If you were in Fort Worth today and you were driving on I-35 and there was a 100 car pileup, and we definitely send prayers and to those families for anyone who was involved. If you were on the freeway and you saw it and you thought you were going to be in it, you experienced fear. If you were involved, you definitely experienced fear. Just watching it on the news for some people could generate a fear response or definitely just a response. And it may or may not be a fear response, but it could generate a response. Just seeing that. So it's a result. So that in that case, it was at something with our safety. The reason why it could generate a response by just watching it, you could think, I could have been me. I could have been driving there, or I'm afraid to drive, or I'm so glad I didn't drive. But either way, it could generate some type of response. More about the physiological response. The emotion of fear is felt, it's like dread. It can be that, okay, something bad's going to happen. And sometimes we're busy anticipating fear, and we're so busy anticipating fear and that something that could go wrong, we still lock up ourselves. We're still stuck in that moment of what if it goes wrong? What if this happens? And we're so busy with those what ifs of fear that we still can't move forward. What if this? What if that? And it is just as real, those what ifs can be just as real for us as the fear. We see something in front of us and we think it's about to be bad. So we're fearful. If you were walking at night and you feel safe, but suddenly you hear some rustling in the bushes behind you. That might cause a little fear. You might think, is it just an animal? Is it a cat? Is it a person behind me? If you were walking and you hear, even in the daytime, when someone's just behind you and you don't know this person, and that you turn thinking, I'm going to turn so that they're not behind me. I don't want to, I'm just kind of curious what's going on. So you turn and they turn behind you. That could cause some fear. That because that is a perceived sense of dread, perceive that something's going to happen, and you fear your physical being. That is where that psychological component to fear comes in. What is going to happen to me? And we heard about the flight or fight, but psychologists in recent years have added another one, and it's freeze, flight, or fright. So, what that freeze says is your body stops. Sometimes we don't run, we don't fight, we're just frozen. When I gave you the example of the rustling in the trees, you can have either one of them. It's, you hear the rustling of someone in bushes behind you as you're walking at night. You felt safe until you heard that sound. You might just freeze. Sometime in the moment, your body doesn't know what to do. And it goes back to there's a chemical response. One of the things that can happen, your brain can just stop. You can't process anything. So you freeze. So when you look at the flight side of it, you might run. I hear this in the trees. I'm getting out of here. I am gone. Um, I am so gone. I can't do this. I gotta go. I gotta go. I'm afraid. That fear is real. And so you run. Then the other idea is you might fight. So in that same scenario, if someone were behind you, you might turn around like, I'm ready, I'm taking them on. You want to fear strong and invincible. Even though inside you might be quite afraid, you're going to put up this facade. And it's not even really a facade because in that moment, in that fight mentality, you ready to just fight, full on fight. You may have never had a fight in your life, but you are full on, I got to fight. This is a problem. I got to do something about this. So we freeze, we flight, we run, we fight. So when you look at how the physical and the emotional, they're tied together. We cannot separate them. The physical things that happen in our body have a psychological response. We talked about how they're the health risk, and some of those are related to our psychological well-being. So when we are in the zone of being anxious, being nervous, not sure how we're feeling, it does. You talked about ulcers, for instance, being a response to fear. And you never would think of that. Well, fear and anxiety, which we're going to talk about in a second, are closely related. And they all have that negative impact on our body. They allow our body to feel all of that negative energy, just like we did with making the fist. And your body feels that much tension. It can't have a good response, it can't have a good outcome. So let's look at anxiety versus fear. They are very closely related. We think of anxiety as being maybe a little longer, and they are both a result of a response to a threat. Now, anxiety is longer lasting than the fear. Fear is that person who, as I said, you're walking down the street and you're just going, maybe your mailbox is at the end of the block and you're going to get your mail like you always do, but suddenly you hear something behind you and there's never anybody out here. And for some reason, it generates fear. Well, if something happened to you later on when you got ready to walk down that same street, you might not just feel fear, you might feel anxiety because that's a longer lasting thing that stays within your body. And now the anxiety can be triggered by, man, when I did this before, something bad happened. and I don't want to go through it again because this is bad. But anxiety may or may not be triggered. It could be that we've talked about anxiety, and anxiety is a psychological response, a psychological issue in life. It can be triggered, or you may have anxiety and may not even understand why. Or as I like to explain to people right now, coming out of 2020, that was a year that generated anxiety and fear into people. And I'll tell you why I say that. No matter what side of the political arena you were on, it was a tumultuous, crazy political season. And as a result, people were left feeling, as the kids used to say, some kind of way because you didn't know what to feel. You were angry, you were nervous, you were afraid at times. All of these happened during this political season. It just was a crazy time. Then, in the beginning of the year, after the death of George Floyd, we had so many marches with Black Lives Matter, which we're still seeing more and more things that have happened. It brought light to more police murders and shootings than had ever been brought before. But if you were just watching it, whether you attended a rally or not, just watching that could cause anxious feelings. We talk about how it relates to fear. Parents are afraid for their children. It's like if you have a son, if my son goes out, is he going to come back alive? If my daughter goes out, is she going to get stopped while driving? Will something happen? We have shades of Sandra Bland, who was driving and didn't turn on her signal. And as a result of that and an interaction with police officers, she's dead today. We can think so it heightened that fear and anxiety in people. So you can see how they're related. Our environment is just toxic right now. And then on top of all of that, you add COVID. COVID-19 shut down so many things. So we didn't have the ability to just get up and go. Even if you weren't afraid to, at some points in time, there's just nowhere to get up and go. Restaurants, bars, clubs, things people went to closed, church closed. So many things people couldn't do. So you lost the ability to just get up and go. You lost the ability to just reach out and touch someone. And losing that sense of touch is a whole nother topic we're going to talk about another time, just how important that is. But when you lose those things, you lose your comfort zone. When you lose your comfort zone, it's easy for anxiety and fear to take over. So those are just some more things. So let's move forward and look at what about spiritual? How does this relate to our spiritual life? Well, it can shake our faith. Um, it can. It doesn't have to, but let's be real. It can. Fear can take over. But guess what? God knew we would have fear. How do I know that? Why do I say that? In the New American Standard Bible, the word fear not, the phrase fear not, appears 143 times. In the King James Bible, translation of the Bible, it appears 170 times. Fear not appears 158 times in the English Standard Bible and 82 times in the New International Version. So no matter which translation you read, and there are others out there, I just chose four, fear not appears a lot. God knew we would have fear. From Genesis to Revelation, you can find verses dealing with fear and anxiety, but fearing not. So, what does that say? We should fear? Heavens, no. God knew we were going to have fear, so that's why He had to keep telling us to fear not. He knew that this was something that we would walk through, something we would experience, something that it's just there. So because it's just there, he wants us to know that we don't have to. From a spiritual response, it comes down to where do we put our faith? What do we believe in? So I wanted to, on the spiritual plane, look at just some verses and discuss them shortly about managing our fear. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." And it starts off, "Do not fear." And so when we think about that verse, "Do not fear, I'm with you," and we hold on to that thought that God is with us, and that's reason not to fear. But does that take care, rid of our fear? No, because sometimes we're still going to fear. Okay, I know you there, God, but right now, I'm calling on you, I'm holding on you, but I'm a little scared. And we admit it and we say it so we can ask Him to take away that fear. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. Psalm 56:3. And so that's just a direct quote. That was David saying, when I'm afraid, oh yeah, I put my trust in you because I can't trust what I see. Because what I see sometimes can make me afraid. So when I am afraid, oh, I trust you because what I see, ooh, is too scary. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but the power of love and a sound mind. And one thing to think of is if it didn't come from God, God didn't give me that spirit. I don't need that one. So God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. So when that spirit of fear takes over, and the spirit of fear is more than just I'm afraid of this. It's more than just I'm walking down the street and there's a sound behind me. That's that fear in the moment. But man, if you have a spirit of fear, you're the person who walks in fear all the time. You're always afraid. It's just never right. If that is you, that isn't good, that spirit of fear, because that kind of fear can be crippling because you're afraid of everything. And if you're afraid of everything, you won't do anything because of fear. So when you realize that God hasn't given you the spirit of fear, but the power of love and a sound mind, you stop and think, do I want to have fear or do I want to have a sound mind? Which one do you want to have? Fear or a sound mind? Which one is going to impact you more? Which one is going to allow you to live more? Which one is going to give you the freedom that you need to just say, okay, I'm good. I want that sound mind. I am not going to walk in fear because that fear is not going to do me any good. And you really let go of it. It's not just let go. We're going to talk near the end about some of that, how to reconcile all of this, but I want you to stop and think, what do I do? I've got to let go of that fear. So, in letting go of that fear, here's another verse, Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Don't be scared. God's going to go with you wherever you go. There is no need to have fear. The last verse I want to share is do not be anxious about anything. Even though it's talking about anxiety, we talked about that relationship between fear and anxiety. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and pleading and thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And that's Philippians 4:6 and 7. So this one first says you can have some peace. First, it says don't be anxious, don't be afraid, don't be fearful, don't be scared. But in everything, good, bad, and ugly, in everything with prayer and pleadings, prayer and asking God and thanking God. That Thanksgiving is, I'm not thanking you after, I'm thanking you right now, God, that I'm praying, I'm asking, and I'm thanking. And I'm gonna let you know my request. And I'm gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm gonna let you know my request and I'm gonna leave it there because I'm gonna already thank you for taking care of it however you see fit. And at that point, I know that the peace of God, which is far beyond I can even imagine, will guard my heart. So my anxiety, my fear won't have to be there. It's gone. So when we think about the spiritual, the physical, and the emotional thoughts of fear, we see fear is real. We see spiritually, God knew it because many times it's mentioned, fear not in his word. But as I've said, our society right now makes us fearful, makes some people fearful. Our society right now generates fear, and we are really not sure what we need to do with that fear. Well, from a spiritual point of view, that's where your prayer comes in. That's where your depending on God comes in and saying, God, you didn't give me the spirit of fear. So what am I going to do with it? You say you commanded me to be strong and courageous and don't be terrified. That's hard for me to do. So how am I going to do it? Oh, I'm going to remember you haven't given me the spirit of fear, but the power of love and a sound mind, not walking in that spirit of fear where everything causes you fear, the spirit of fear. That's the spiritual side. But from the psychological side, some of the things I would say is, being able to address those fears, being able to stop and think, what is it that's causing my fear? Why am I feeling so afraid? Why am I so worried? And looking at it, and so many of our fears are irrational. Now, some of our fears are real and they are justified. Some of them are irrational, based on based on real things. We talked earlier about it's a fear is dealing with a real threat or a perceived threat. We perceive this as being scary. We perceive this as being more than we can handle. Therefore, we are fearful. So, when that's the case, we have to learn that we can say, okay, I'm not going to walk in that fear. I'm going to look at it head on. And even if it's a real fear, just walking in fear is not going to make it go away. So when you're out of that fearful zone, you can find a solution to whatever is going on. You can find a solution to what has generated that fear. You don't have to live in fear. You can live in faith. I have a statement that is on my voicemail, and I'm getting lots of interesting comments. And it says, fear and faith cannot exist in the same space. So some people perceive that as saying, oh, if I have fear, I don't have faith. And what I like to say is, no, I think you can have fear and you have faith. That's why God had to tell you so many times, fear not, because you had enough faith to listen to God when he says fear not. But yes, you'll walk in fear. I'm saying you can either be fearful or you can either walk in faith. Now, you're not in the same one at the same time, but it's a constant choice. Do I want to have fear today? Do I want to have faith today? And it might be, do I want to have fear this moment or faith this moment? And you're choosing. Sometimes fear is going to win, sometimes faith is going to win. That is just the way life rolls. We will all go through moments of fearfulness. But who do we want to listen to more, our faith or our fear? What do we want to walk in more, our faith or our fear? It's a choice. Is it our faith? Is it our fear? So when your fear and faith are walking in the same space, it just means you go back and forth. Doesn't mean because you're fearful you have no faith. It means at that point in time, your your fears are taken over. So that comes to our call to action. When it comes to your fears, let go of your fears. Now, since this is a physical, spiritual, and psychological issue, sometimes you have that spirit of fear And it's more than just praying. Maybe you do need help. Maybe you do need to talk to a professional because your fears are guiding your life. And you see that if your fears are guiding your life, as we started off with saying, that can have some impact on your physical health. So you don't want to do that. If you're not walking in fear, you may know someone else who is. Help them walk through their fears. Be able to listen. And sometimes we can hear things that people are afraid of or fears that they have, and you're like, really, that's the dumbest thing I heard. Well, you know what? It's real to them. And something that may annoy you, may cause fear in you, may cause an anxiety in you, may seem like the dumbest thing they've heard. So be able to help someone else walk through their fears and their anxiety. Remain politically aware. I've said this all year, and I'm going to say it through this month. We have come through a political season that was horrific. I'm glad it's over because it was not pretty. And it generated fear, it generated anxiety, and that's because we were electing a president. But all politics is local. Remain aware of what's going on in your city, what's going on in your state, because all politics really can impact your life. And mask up. Masking is caring. Whether you have a shot or not, it's important that we continue to mask up. Everything I hear and read says that's still important. Do we have mask fatigue? Yes. Do I hate that I have to make sure there's a mask in the car because I can't go in somewhere if I don't have it? Do I sometimes get out of the car, jump out of the car and get to the door and go, oh my gosh, I forgot? Yes. But I go back because I know. Not just because I can't get in. Even there are places that let you in without a mask. Well, I don't want to go in without one. I want to protect me and I want to protect others. That's why masking is caring. It's caring about yourself and it's caring about others. So as we end this edition of Thinking Thursday, I'm Bronwyn Lucas from Able Counseling and Consulting, where we affirm, build, lead, and empower you. If you are someone who finds life stresses, fear, anxiety, depression, or just life issues too much to bear, reach out. Give me a call. I am your caring counselor, and my number is 682 272 3949. I am here to help. If I'm not the therapist for you, no worries. I'll help you find someone who work with because I believe, as I like to always say, mental health is health. So take care of your health. See you next week, and we'll have those bugs worked out about which Facebook page we're really showing on. Bye now.